Hey, I'm Max and welcome to my Unity Basics about scripts. In this video I will not teach you how to code in C# because that's what the scripts are coded in, but I'm going to show you how to use that code into Unity and how to apply it to game objects and everything you need to know about that. So if you don't already know at least the basics on how to program in C# or actually any other language, since they're pretty similar, then you should go learn that first. Or you can try to learn it as you make games into Unity, but at least try to learn the basics like what are variables and functions before starting scripting. Okay, so let's get right into the script tutorial. So what is a script? A script is a class or multiple class that you will apply to a game object. Unity already has a bunch of functions already built in. For example, when your game object is created, every time your game object collides with something or enters a trigger, it will trigger an event that you can use in your code to do whatever you want. So let's actually show you. Here I'll create a 2D sprite. I will set the ordering layer to 1 to make sure it's above the background. And I'll set my sprite to the enemy right here. Now here I have a game object with only a sprite renderer. And here I can add a component. And I can click New Script and type the name of the script and create it. But actually I prefer, since I want to keep all my scripts in one folder or sometimes in multiple folders, but I want to organize them myself, I prefer to go in my assets, right click, create, and then a C# script. So let's do that here. I'll call it tutorial and then I create it. You can open up scripts from Unity into any type of text editing software, even Notepad would work, but obviously it's recommended to have something like Visual Studio or Visual Code. So you can see when you have errors and when you have like the variables, you can see them highlighted and all that stuff. So by default your script is going to have using Unity Engine and be derived from MonoBehavior. Any class that derives from MonoBehavior can be added as a component, and it has to derive from MonoBehavior to be a component. If I remove this here, it is no longer a component and the start and update here will no longer work. Here the start function, as it says above here, it is called before the first frame update. So in here you will do things that you want to do only once when your object is created. And here in the update function it is called every frame. So you want to do display stuff or timer stuff. There are some other useful Unity functions. I cannot show them all to you, but I'll show the most important ones. So I think a very big one is fixed update. And unlike update that is called once per frame, fixed update is called every fixed amount of time. And if you want to change that amount of time, it's time.fixed delta time. And you can actually change this if you want. I think by default it's 0.02. Another one would be something like on collision enter 2D or not 2D if you're using 3D. Also on collision exit and on collision stay. Now for the variables that you create in the script, if you create something that is public, it's going to show in the editor. So let's say I'll call it pub so you can see it. And I'll create a private float private, and I'll show you if I save this. Now I go on to my square, I add a component, and I'll add my component tutorial since that's the name of the script. And I can only do this because the tutorial script is a MonoBehavior. And as you can see, I can see the pub here and I can change the value, but I cannot see the private one. From the script, you can access the game object that the script is attached to. So for example, here my tutorial script is attached to the game object square. So if I go in the code and I do game object with a little g, that is the square game object. So let's say I do destroy game object like this. So if I do this on the first fix update, it will destroy the game object and the script will then destroy because it is on the game object. I can also access any other component on the game object by doing something like gameobject.transform to access the transform, or .getComponent. And actually to get component you don't even have to do gameobject, you can just do getComponent and then something like sprite renderer, and that will return in the script this sprite renderer right here, because getComponent will always get the components on the same game object as the script. So let's do a little test to show how scripts work. So let's say here I do getComponent sprite renderer dot color equals new color, and then I do 000, so that should turn it black when the start is triggered, so when it's created. So you can see the square is black, and if I stop the game it's white, and if I start it again it's going to be black again. Now let's actually make it another color. Let's say 0.5 on all three and see how that looks. And while we're at it, we might as well set the transform.position to new vector3 0 0 0, so it's in the middle. So as you can see now, my square is white and it's not in the middle, but because it has that script, when it runs, the start run function will get called and it gets set to gray and in the middle. So let's actually do something useful as an example. So here I'll add a component rigid body 2D to my square game object, and in the script I will do private rigid body 2D RB. Here I'll do RB equals GetComponent rigid body 2D, and in the fixed update I'll do rb.addForce new vector2 1 0, so to the right. So here I create a variable for the rigid body 2D. I set it to getComponent rigid body 2D, which will get the rigid body 2D on the same game object as the script, and I add force to the right. Let's make it even more useful and create a public vector2, and then let's call it direction. And here, instead of sending it to the right, we'll send it to direction. Now let's go into our scene, into our tutorial script, set the direction, let's say to 1 0, and here I'll create a double. I'll put it down a little bit, but it doesn't matter because we set the transform position to 0 in the start. So here I'll do 0 1, and they should both go to the right and up. And whoops, they actually fell down because I forgot to disable the gravity. So by default gravity is 1. I'll just set it to 0 on both, and let's see how that looks now. They should go to the right and up, and there you go, they both accelerate in their own direction. So the scripts are pretty much limitless. You can do everything with this. You can even add components, remove components, change the parameters of components. Let's say in the script I could get the rigid body and change the scale, gravity scale, or change the mass, or I could change the sprite, the color, I could teleport it. You can really do anything with this. So before I end the video, I'll show you some scripts that I did for this tutorial, which is the beginner game tutorial I did on my channel. So this game is really simple. All it does is spawn enemy every 5 seconds with random color based on the speed. So it has a random speed and the color is based on the speed, and when you click on them they explode, and there's a little particles and it leaves a little spot the same color as the enemy and add some score. So if you want to see how to make this game, you can check out my playlist for the beginner game tutorial. Let's quickly check the scripts to see how simple they really are. So here I have my destroy in script, which is a script that destroys the object in the set amount of time. So here I put the time, I set the timer, and when the timer is ready I destroy the game object. And what it looks like in game is like this here, destroy in, I put the time 30, and when this object is created, after 30 seconds it gets deleted. Now let's see the particle system destroy. So I have my particle system here, I get component to get access to the particle system, and when it is stopped I destroy it. Here I have the game script, which has the enemy prefab. So over here in my game I drag in the enemy prefab. I have my timer, and when the timer is ready I create a new game object. If you don't know how to do this, you can check my Unity basics on game object. So just that will make an enemy spawn every 5 seconds. Here I have my player script, which is a little bit more complex. I have access to the score text to change the score when we destroy an enemy. I keep track of my score, my mouse position, and the click timer, so you cannot spam click. Here I have my mouse move and mouse click events. I will talk about events in a future video. And simply when I click, I check for enemies near with the find objects of type like we talk about in game object. I loop through all the enemies, and if they're close enough I damage them. So it's really not that hard to do. And here is my final script, the enemy script. I have the speed as a public variable, and I have my game objects for the particles and the spot. I have my rigid body and direction, and I simply do the movement and the bounce on the edge. And here when we click, I want to spawn a spot and a particle system, and obviously destroy the enemy. So I hope it is clear to you how to use script now. Make sure to check out my other tutorials if you're just starting out on Unity, or even if you want to learn how to make a game, and subscribe for more.